Hello, my friends. Welcome to Storyriem. I'm so happy you're here with me today. So, take a slow breath, relax, open your mind, and let me take you on a journey to a place most people have never truly imagined. Today, we are traveling deep into the heart of Africa. Let me ask you something. Did you know that there was once a man so incredibly rich that many historians believe he may have been the wealthiest person who ever lived? Not just the richest man of his time. We are talking about all of human history. He was not a European king. He was not a Chinese emperor. He was an African king who ruled over a powerful kingdom that most of the world had never even seen on a map. And here is the most incredible part. When this man traveled through Egypt, he gave away gold wherever he went. He gave it to the poor. He gave it to merchants. He gave it to important people. He gave freely with generosity and joy. But he had so much gold that his generosity reportedly caused the value of gold in Egypt to fall for years. His name was Mansa Musa. Today, we are going to discover who this extraordinary man was, where he came from, how he became so incredibly wealthy, and why his story remains one of the most fascinating stories in human history. So stay with me. This is a story about gold, power, adventure, and a king whose wealth became legendary. And by the end of the story, there's something important I want you to remember. Around the year 1280, in the western part of the great continent of Africa, a child was born. His name was Musa. We know very little about his early childhood, but we do know a lot about the incredible world he was born into. West Africa was a land of breathtaking beauty and great power. Wide rivers flowed through thick green forests. Vast grasslands stretched across the horizon, covered with tall grass and scattered trees. These grasslands are called savannas. Imagine standing there and looking out across the land. The grass stretches so far that it seems to continue forever. To the south, there were mountains, and to the north was enormous Sahara Desert, stretching across thousands of kilometers. It was a harsh and unforgiving place, with very little water, almost no shade, and extreme heat during the day. But the people who lived in this part of Africa were strong and highly skilled. They were farmers, traders, craftsmen, builders, and explorers. They created cities, roads, markets, and trading networks long before much of the outside world even knew about their civilizations. And beneath this powerful land was something extraordinary: gold. In the southern part of the Mali Empire were rich gold fields. A gold field is an area of land where gold could be found in the soil or in rivers. And Mali did not have just a little gold. It had so much gold that traders had been crossing the dangerous Sahara Desert for centuries just to reach it. They came from North Africa. They came from the Middle East. Some even came from as far away as Europe. They all wanted the same thing: Mali's gold. And the person at the top of the Mali Empire controlled this incredible wealth. He was called the Mansa. The title meant something like King of Kings. But gold was not the only valuable resource in the empire. There was also salt. Today, salt is something we can easily buy in any shop. But in the ancient world, salt was incredibly valuable. People needed it to stay healthy. They also used it to preserve food, which meant keeping food from spoiling. And in the northern part of the empire, near the Sahara Desert, there were enormous deposits of salt. The Mali Empire was perfectly positioned between two great treasures: the gold of the south and the salt of the north. Trade caravans crossed the empire, carrying valuable goods. And every time traders passed the land, they paid taxes to the Mansa. Little by little, generation after generation, the wealth of Mali grew, and it grew into something the world had never seen before. By the time young Musa was born, the Mali Empire was already one of the richest and most powerful kingdoms on earth. But Musa was not yet a king. He was simply a young man from a royal family. He watched the royal court. He studied. He listened. He learned. He was patient, serious, and observant. And then one day, something happened that would completely change his life. The king of Mali at that time was a curious and adventurous man. He had heard stories about the enormous ocean to the west, the Atlantic Ocean, and he wanted to know what was beyond it, what was on the other side of the horizon. So the king decided to find out. He built a fleet of boats. According to some old accounts, he prepared as many as 2,000 boats. He filled them with sailors, food, and water. Then, he sent the boats west into the vast Atlantic Ocean. He told the sailors to continue until they reached the other side, and he promised to wait for their return. But the boats never came back. Not one of them. The king waited and waited, but no one returned. So, the king made a remarkable decision. He would go himself. He gathered another fleet, sailed west into the vast and unknown Atlantic Ocean, and disappeared beyond the horizon. And he never came back. Think about that for a moment. The ruler of one of the richest empires in the world sailed into an unknown ocean and simply vanished. Musa had been the king's deputy, the person responsible for managing the kingdom while the king was away. But the king never returned. And when that happened, Musa became the new Mansa of the Mali Empire. The year was around 1312. He was about 30 years old, and he was about to begin a reign that would make his name famous across the world. Musa was around 30 years old when he became the ruler of Mali. He would reign for the next 25 years, and during those years, he would build something so extraordinary that the world would remember it for centuries. But the greatest chapter of Musa's story had not yet begun. He was about to take a journey unlike any journey a king had taken before. And during that journey, the world would finally discover the true power, wealth, and greatness of the Mali Empire. Musa was a deeply religious man. He was a Muslim, which means he followed the religion of Islam. One of the most important duties in Islam is the Hajj, a sacred pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. A pilgrimage is a long and meaningful journey to a holy place. Today, Mecca is located in Saudi Arabia, but in the 14th century, traveling from Mali to Mecca was an enormous challenge. The journey covered nearly 4,000 kilometers. It passed through the Sahara Desert, across North Africa, and through many different lands. For most people, a journey like this was almost impossible to imagine. It was dangerous, it was expensive, and it could take many months. But Musa was not an ordinary man. He decided to make the Hajj not only as an act of faith, but also as a way to show the world the greatness of Mali. He wanted people to see the wealth and power of his empire. But more than that, he wanted to show his generosity. He would give in a way that few kings before him had ever given. He would not travel to frighten the world. He would travel to give. For 2 full years, Musa prepared for the journey. He organized his royal court, his soldiers, his scholars, and his servants. He gathered the gold that would travel with him and carefully planned every part of the expedition. And finally, when everything was ready, he gave the order. The great journey begins. 60,000 people and 80 camels carrying gold. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa left his capital and began traveling north. But this was not a quiet royal journey. Musa did not travel alone. He traveled with an enormous procession of around 60,000 people. There were soldiers, government officials, teachers, religious scholars, servants, cooks, musicians, his wives, and their attendants. Thousands of people followed their king across the desert on the sacred road to Mecca. The procession stretched across the land like a moving river of humanity. And then there was the gold. 80 camels traveled with the group, each carrying around 300 pounds of gold dust. Just imagine that for a moment. 300 pounds is an enormous amount of weight. Most people could not even lift it. Now imagine 80 camels, each carrying that much gold. The total value of the gold was greater than the entire treasury of many European kingdoms. The great procession slowly moved north across the Sahara. The daytime heat was brutal. The nights were bitterly cold. Water had to be carefully stored and managed. But wherever the procession stopped, something incredible happened. The people of the towns and villages became richer. Musa gave gold to the poor. He gave gold to mosques and teachers. He gave gold to ordinary families who came simply to watch the great procession pass by. He gave without hesitation. It was as if gold flowed from him like water from a river, without counting, without fear, because he believed there was always more. Can you imagine walking beside such a man? Watching gold pass from hand to hand like sand? Watching strangers smile, cry, and thank him? Watching a poor family suddenly receive enough wealth to change their lives? For some people, an entire city might have felt rich for a single day simply because Mansa Musa had passed through. But nothing could prepare the world for what happened when the great procession reached Egypt. Arrival in Cairo. The generosity that changed an economy. At that time, Egypt was ruled by a powerful man named Al-Nasir Muhammad. He had welcomed many important visitors. He was familiar with wealth, luxury, and royal ceremonies. But when Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo in the summer of 1324, even the Egyptians were not prepared for what they saw. The procession entered the city like a river of gold. Thousands of soldiers and servants moved in organized lines. Behind them came camels carrying enormous amounts of gold dust. And then came something even more spectacular. 500 servants walked ahead of Musa in 2 long lines. Each servant carried a golden staff, a long, decorated rod that represented royal power. 500 golden staffs reflected the sunlight as the procession moved through the city. It was a sight unlike anything Cairo had ever seen. There was, however, one small moment of difficulty. In Egyptian royal tradition, visitors were expected to bow before the ruler. Musa respectfully refused. He was a pilgrim traveling to Mecca, and he believed that he should bow only before God. After a respectful conversation, a solution was found. The 2 rulers met as equals. And then Musa began to give. He gave gold to Al-Nasir Muhammad and his royal court. He gave gold to scholars, judges, and government officials. He walked through the streets of Cairo and gave gold to poor families. He bought goods from merchants and often paid far more than the asking price. He even built a mosque using his own wealth and supported teachers and schools. Musa remained in Cairo for 3 months. And when he finally left, something unexpected had happened. There was suddenly so much gold circulating in the city that the value of gold fell dramatically. Think about how markets work. When something is rare, it is usually valuable. But when too much of it suddenly enters a market, its value can fall. That is exactly what happened with gold. Gold became less valuable, while the prices of other goods began to rise. Ordinary people found it more difficult to buy food. Merchants lost money, and the Egyptian economy continued to feel the effects for years. The gold market reportedly took around 12 years to recover. One man, 3 months, 12 years of economic disruption, all because he had given away so much gold. It was an extraordinary event. Few people in history have ever changed an economy simply through their generosity. But Musa's journey was not over. He had traveled thousands of kilometers, and he still had one of the most important parts of his journey ahead of him. He continued east and finally reached Mecca. There, he completed the Hajj with deep faith, prayer, and devotion. He gave generously to the holy places and met scholars, leaders, and important people from across the Islamic world. And everywhere he went, his reputation traveled ahead of him. People had already heard about the mysterious African king, the king who possessed unimaginable wealth, the king who gave away gold as if it were ordinary sand, the king from Mali. But something extraordinary happened during Musa's journey home. He met a remarkable man named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. Al-Sahili was a poet and an architect, a person who designs and creates buildings. He came from Granada, a city in what is now Spain. He was highly educated, cultured, creative, and incredibly talented. Musa immediately recognized that there was something special about him. Musa invited al-Sahili to return with him to Mali, and to convince him, Musa gave him an extraordinary gift, 200 pounds of gold. He also asked al-Sahili to design beautiful new buildings for the empire. Al-Sahili agreed. After more than a year of traveling, the great procession finally returned to Mali, and as soon as they arrived, al-Sahili began his work. One of his greatest creations was the famous Jingareber Mosque in the city of Timbuktu. It was a magnificent building with tall towers and smooth, curved walls. The mosque was built from dried mud brick, a special building material that helps keep buildings cool in hot weather and warm when the temperature drops. And here is something incredible. Parts of that mosque are still standing today. Nearly 700 years later, you, clear as throat, can still walk through its doors. Timbuktu, the city of knowledge with 25,000 students. But the greatest thing Mansa Musa built was not made of mud brick. It was made of knowledge. Under Musa's rule, Timbuktu grew into one of the most important centers of learning in the entire world. The city was already a busy trading center, filled with merchants and travelers. But Musa wanted Timbuktu to become something much greater. He built schools. He invited scholars and teachers from Egypt, Arabia, and other parts of the Islamic world. He supported libraries and paid for talented teachers to come and live in Timbuktu. The Sankor Mosque eventually grew into a major center of education, almost like a great university. At its height, it is believed to have attracted as many as 25,000 students. They studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, philosophy, and many other subjects. Imagine that. 25,000 people learning, studying, and sharing knowledge together in the heart of West Africa. And yet, much of the outside world had no idea that this incredible civilization even existed. European maps from that period often show the land south of the Sahara as empty spaces, blank, unknown areas on the map. They did not know about Mali's enormous wealth. They did not know about its libraries. They did not know about Timbuktu. And they certainly did not know about Mansa Musa. But that was about to change. Mansa Musa died around the year 1337, and his son became the new Mansa. Unfortunately, his son did not possess the same strength and influence as his father. Over time, other kingdoms became more powerful. The great Mali Empire slowly began to lose its influence, and eventually, much of the world began to forget the incredible story of Mansa Musa. But then, something happened. Legacy, the Catalan Atlas, and the world's memory. In the year 1375, a mapmaker in Spain created one of the most famous maps of the medieval world. It was called the Catalan Atlas. And in the middle of West Africa, the mapmaker drew a remarkable figure. An African king sat proudly on a golden throne. He wore a golden crown, and in his hand he held a large piece of gold, raising it toward the sky as if showing the world the incredible wealth of his kingdom. Next to the figure was a message describing him as one of the richest and most powerful kings in the world. His name was Mansa Musa. For the first time, the wider world was beginning to place him on its map. But the truth is, he had always been there. He had always been powerful. He had always been extraordinary. The world simply had not been looking. What Mansa Musa's story teaches us about our own journey. So, what can we take with us from the story of Mansa Musa? He built one of the greatest empires in African history. He made a journey that changed the world's understanding of wealth. He helped transform Timbuktu into a major center of knowledge and learning. And yet, after his death, the world nearly forgot him. But there is one part of his story that stays with me. Mansa Musa came from a land that much of the world did not see. He ruled a kingdom that many people had never even placed on their maps. And yet, he was there. He was generous. He was intelligent. He was powerful. And he was surrounded by gold. He was not unseen because he was small. He was unseen because people had not yet learned to look. And that makes me think of you, my friend. Maybe your story has not yet appeared on anyone else's map. Maybe sometimes you feel that your voice, your thoughts, and your ideas are still difficult to express in English. Maybe the English language sometimes feels huge, complicated, and far away. But remember this. You are already here. You have always been here. Every new English word you learn is like a small piece of gold. You carry it with you. No one can take it away. You cannot lose it. And unlike ordinary gold, its value only grows as you continue learning. Every story you listen to, every new word you understand, and every sentence that becomes a little easier is another piece of treasure you are adding to your own collection. One piece of gold at a time. One day, the world may finally see everything you've been building. But even before anyone else sees it, your knowledge is already real. It belongs to you, and no one can take it away. So keep listening, keep learning, keep building your treasure, because every small step matters, and that is something you should be proud of. This is Storytime English. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Before you go, leave a comment and tell me. Before watching the story, did you already know who Mansa Musa was? I would really love to know. Write your answer in the comments below. And if this story helped you learn English today, please like this video and subscribe to Storytime English. Your support helps us continue creating stories like this for you. Until next time, my friends.